No one else responded. Then the inhabitants of Earth's death world appeared. HFY Earth had long been a planet of mystery in the vast expanse of the galaxy. It was a world teeming with life, yet so far removed from the rest of the universe. Its blue oceans, its dense forests, its towering mountains, and its unpredictable weather patterns formed a delicate ecosystem, seemingly untouched by the many stars that twinkled in the heavens above. Yet despite all its beauty, Earth was a death world, a planet where survival was constant, where nature itself tested the limits of every living thing. The creatures of Earth had long adapted to this harsh environment, but humans, in their intelligence and stubbornness, had risen above it all. For centuries, humanity had looked to the stars, dreaming of the day when they would no longer be alone in the universe. From their first steps beyond their own atmosphere, humans had been sending signals into the deep silence of space. They had built massive radio telescopes, launched countless probes, and created messages that they sent in every direction, hoping to contact any civilization that might be out there. But for all their efforts, no one had answered. The universe remained eerily quiet, and Earth remained isolated. As the years passed, some began to question if Earth was truly alone or if perhaps the silence was a warning. Had other civilizations fallen into ruin? Or was there something about Earth that made it impossible for others to make contact? Some speculated that Earth was simply too violent, too unpredictable for any advanced race to take an interest in. Others believed that perhaps Earth had been forgotten, a small, insignificant planet lost among the stars. Humanity's hope, however, remained undimmed. There were those who refused to believe that the silence meant nothing. They refused to believe that Earth was destined to remain isolated forever. Among them was President Helena Trask, a leader who had dedicated her life to pushing humanity into the future. She had led Earth through years of conflict, economic hardship, and environmental collapse. Yet she held on to the belief that humanity's place in the universe was waiting to be found. For years, President Trask and her team of scientists and diplomats had been preparing the final message, a message that would, for the first time, fully represent the essence of humanity. It would be sent in a way that no other attempt had been before. It would contain all the knowledge, the culture, the history, and the ambition of humankind. It would speak to whoever was out there, telling them that humanity was ready to join the galactic community. The day of the launch arrived. A massive space station orbiting Earth housed the advanced communication arrays, and it was there that Trask's message was broadcast into the stars. The world held its breath, waiting for the response that would change everything. The message was simple but profound. "We are Earth, we are ready, we seek peace and cooperation, we offer knowledge, culture, and the spirit of survival. Come to us and we will greet you as equals." Days passed, then weeks. The world waited for any sign of contact, any indication that the message had been received. But the silence remained. Earth's inhabitants had grown accustomed to waiting, but this time, the weight of the silence felt different. It was as though the universe itself was holding its breath, watching and waiting. Then, a breakthrough came. It was not a grand announcement or a booming voice from the heavens. No, the first response came in a cryptic message, delivered in a burst of static that was initially dismissed as interference. The message was short, barely more than a few lines, but its meaning was clear. "You are on a death world. Your survival is a test. Prove that you can survive the trials and you may earn your place among us. Fail and you will be erased." The message left the world in stunned silence. The words hung in the air like a challenge, a gauntlet thrown at the feet of humanity. A death world. What did that even mean? Earth was a world full of life, full of energy and potential. Yet, according to this alien message, it was nothing more than a world marked for destruction, a place that had yet to prove it was worthy of survival. Panic spread across Earth in the days that followed. Governments scrambled to interpret the message. Was it a threat, a warning? Or had humanity just been cursed, condemned to exist on a planet that was destined for extinction? The uncertainty was overwhelming, and fear quickly took hold of the public. Some feared the worst, an alien invasion or annihilation. Others believed it was a ruse, a trick to see how humanity would react. Among all the confusion, President Trask remained resolute. She refused to let fear control Earth's fate. She called an emergency summit of world leaders and experts, hoping to find a path forward. There were many who questioned whether humanity should fight back, whether they should prepare for war. Others argued that a more diplomatic approach was needed. Perhaps the aliens could be reasoned with. As the leaders debated, President Trask addressed the world. In her speech, she made one thing clear: humanity had survived countless trials. They had faced wars, natural disasters, famine, and disease. Earth itself had been a death world for millennia, yet humankind had risen from the ashes time and time again. She called upon the strength and unity of Earth's people. They would not bow to fear. They would rise to the challenge. "The universe may see us as a death world," she said, her voice steady and resolute. "But we know better. We know that we are a world of survivors, and if there is one thing the universe will learn, it is that Earth will not be defeated. We will prove to them that we are ready. We will face whatever trials they set before us and show them what humanity is capable of." The world watched as President Trask's words echoed across every continent. Something in those words struck a chord deep within the hearts of every human being. The fear that had gripped Earth began to subside, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. Humanity had been tested before. It had survived countless dangers, both natural and man-made. It was not afraid to fight for its place in the stars. In the days that followed, humanity began preparing for the trials ahead. There was no turning back now. The message from the aliens had set the stage for something far bigger than anyone had expected. As Earth's leaders scrambled to organize resources, Earth's people were called upon to prepare. Survival experts, engineers, and military strategists worked together to formulate plans. But it wasn't just the government that would carry Earth through this trial. It was the people. The scientists and the farmers, the soldiers and the artists, the mothers and the children. Each person had a role to play in the survival of the human race. In every corner of Earth, people began to adapt. New technologies were developed at an astonishing rate. Earth's military forces trained for potential conflicts, while diplomats reached out to neighboring nations to ensure they were united in this struggle. No one knew exactly what the aliens would bring, but one thing was certain: humanity would not be caught off guard. In the midst of all this preparation, something remarkable happened. The aliens, observing from their distant vantage point, had underestimated humanity. They had expected Earth's people to crumble under the weight of their challenge. They had expected Earth's civilization to fall into chaos and panic. But what they saw instead was something entirely different: unity, resolve, and strength. Earth's people, for all their struggles and imperfections, had come together in the face of an unknown threat. And that, the aliens realized, was something they had not anticipated. As Earth continued its preparations, they had no idea what the trials would bring. But one thing was certain: humanity was not going to back down. Earth, a planet once written off as a death world, was about to show the universe that it was far more than that. It was a world of survivors, and nothing, no alien race, no trial, no challenge, could ever take that away. The days following the alien message were filled with uncertainty, but also determination. Earth had been given a challenge, and while its inhabitants did not fully understand the nature of that challenge, one thing was clear: they had to prove their worth. No longer would they remain in isolation, forgotten by the universe. No longer would they hide behind the walls of their own fears. They had been called to the stars, and they would answer. President Trask was the first to recognize that Earth's response to the alien message had to be swift and decisive. There was no room for hesitation. The challenge posed by the aliens wasn't just a test of Earth's technology or military might. It was a test of humanity's ability to endure, to adapt, and to rise above its own limitations. The aliens had given them a deadline, a limited amount of time to prepare. The fate of the planet seemed to rest on whether humanity could prove its worth, not just to the aliens, but to itself. At the summit of world leaders, President Trask stood before the assembled nations, her face steady and her voice resolute. "We have been given an opportunity, one that we cannot afford to waste. We will prove to the universe that Earth is more than just a death world. We will prove that humanity is ready for the stars. We will show them that, despite the odds, we can survive." The room was filled with murmurs. There was fear, yes, but there was also something else: a sense of unity, a quiet determination. For the first time, the world's nations set aside their differences. There would be no room for petty rivalries or old grudges. This was not a fight for one nation, one people. This was a fight for Earth itself. In the weeks that followed, humanity's finest minds began to work together. Scientists, military strategists, engineers, and survival experts were brought together from every corner of the globe. No one knew what the aliens had in mind, but they did know that humanity had to be ready for anything. Earth's government mobilized its resources, calling upon every able-bodied person to contribute to the effort. The world's military forces began to prepare for possible conflict. Cities reinforced their defenses. Entire nations began to stockpile resources. Earth was bracing itself for something that no one fully understood, but everyone knew it would be unlike anything they had ever faced before. But it was not only Earth's governments and military forces that were preparing. The people of Earth were too. Across the globe, survivalists and ordinary citizens alike began to train. In remote villages, people began to hone skills that had been forgotten by modern civilization: hunting, foraging, navigating through dangerous terrain. In cities, tech experts worked to develop new technologies that could give humanity an edge against whatever the aliens might throw at them. The world was coming together in a way that had never been seen before. Among those who were working day and night to prepare for the trial was Dr. Samuel Rhodes, a renowned scientist and one of the leading experts on Earth's ecosystems. He had spent his life studying the planet's most dangerous species: the apex predators, the deadly storms, the unpredictable climate. His knowledge of Earth's violent nature made him one of the most valuable assets humanity had. It was his belief that the key to surviving the trial lay in understanding the very forces that had shaped their world: the chaos, the violence, and the unpredictability. Dr. Rhodes worked tirelessly, leading teams of researchers who were developing ways to predict the kinds of challenges humanity might face. They analyzed the alien message carefully, searching for any clues about the upcoming trials. What did the aliens mean by Death World? Were they referring to Earth's ecosystem or something more? What kinds of tests could be coming? Despite the uncertainty, Dr. Rhodes remained focused. He knew that humanity's survival depended not just on physical strength, but on adaptability. They had to be ready to outsmart whatever was coming. Earth had always been a place where life had to adapt to survive. Now, humanity would need to do the same. As Earth's preparations continued, so did the mysterious silence from the aliens. Days turned into weeks, and still, no further communication came. It was as though the aliens were watching, waiting for humanity to make the first move. The silence was unnerving, but it also gave Earth time to prepare. Yet as much as they worked to prepare for the unknown, there was still an undercurrent of fear. What if they were not enough? What if Earth's greatest efforts weren't enough to win the aliens' favor? In the midst of the preparations, a sudden breakthrough came. The scientists at the International Space Station, monitoring the skies for any unusual activity, discovered an anomaly. A strange signal appeared on their radar, originating from deep within the outer reaches of the solar system. It was faint at first, barely detectable. But as the days passed, the signal grew stronger. And then on the morning of a particularly tense day, the signal became clear. It was another message from the aliens. This time, the message was not cryptic or mysterious. It was direct. "You have prepared. The trials begin now." No further explanation came. The message was short, almost dismissive. But its meaning was clear. The aliens had been watching. They had been waiting to see how Earth would respond, and now the trials would begin. The world was plunged into chaos. The trials had arrived. There was no more time for preparation. It was now a race for survival, and humanity would have to face whatever the aliens had planned for them. At the United Nations, President Trask called an emergency session. She addressed the world once more, her voice calm but urgent. "The time has come," she said. "We do not know what the aliens have in store for us, but we do know one thing: we will face it together. This is not just a fight for survival. This is a fight for the future of humanity, and we will not back down." The words were simple, but they had the desired effect. Across Earth, the people gathered together. The trials had begun, but humanity was ready to face them head-on. The first trial came swiftly and with little warning. A massive storm, unlike anything Earth had ever seen before, descended upon the planet. It was not a natural storm, but something far worse. The sky darkened, and the winds howled with an unnatural ferocity. The storm swept across the continents, tearing through cities, forests, and oceans. It was as though the very planet itself had been set against humanity. At first, it seemed impossible. Earth's cities, built to withstand most natural disasters, were overwhelmed. Buildings crumbled, floodwaters rose, entire regions were swept away in a matter of hours. It was a scene of devastation that left many wondering how humanity could survive. But then, something remarkable happened. Instead of succumbing to fear and chaos, humanity responded. The people, united by the realization that they had no choice but to survive, came together. Nations sent aid to each other, setting aside old conflicts in the face of the storm's destruction. Engineers worked around the clock to repair vital infrastructure. Communities formed survival networks, sharing resources and knowledge. The military forces, trained for conflict, now became the guardians of Earth's most vulnerable regions. And civilians, ordinary people, stood side by side with soldiers and scientists, working together to weather the storm. It was a trial of endurance, but humanity passed it. The storm eventually subsided, and though the damage was immense, Earth had withstood the challenge. The aliens, watching from afar, had expected humanity to falter. They had expected the world to crumble under the weight of the trial. But instead, they saw something that they had not anticipated. Humans, no matter how fragile their world may have seemed, were survivors. They had been tested, and they had survived. As the storm passed, President Trask addressed the world once more. "We have proven that we are capable of more than the aliens ever imagined," she said. "We have shown them that Earth is not a world to be written off. We are survivors, and we will continue to prove ourselves, no matter the trials that come our way." The storm had been only the beginning. And humanity, having faced its first trial, now stood ready for whatever the aliens had in store. The days after the storm were filled with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. Earth had faced the first challenge and emerged battered but stronger. Though the destruction was immense, the world had united in ways no one could have imagined just weeks before. People had come together, not as separate nations or groups, but as survivors, determined to prove that they were worthy of a place in the greater universe. President Helena Trask stood before the world, addressing the global community. The storm had devastated much of the planet, but humanity had shown resilience. Cities were rebuilding, and the recovery efforts were well underway. However, the victory was not without its challenges. There was still a lingering fear that the aliens, watching from the depths of space, would test them again with something even more dangerous. The world had survived, but would they survive what was coming next? "We have faced the storm and we have endured," President Trask said in her speech. "But this is not over. The aliens have set a path for us, and it is one we must follow. The trials are not finished. We must continue to prove that Earth is more than just a death world. We must show them that we are a species capable of greatness, and we will not back down." Her words echoed through every city on Earth. While some feared the unknown trials ahead, many took them as a call to action. The human spirit, once on the brink of despair, was now emboldened by the challenge. They had survived one trial. Now they had to prepare for the next. As the world's leaders began to plan for the future, another message came. This time it was more specific. The aliens had not merely been watching, they had been observing the recovery efforts. They had seen how quickly humanity had come together to rebuild after the storm, and now they had a new trial for Earth. The message was clear and precise. Survive the beasts of your world. Prove that you can master your planet's deadliest creatures. If you succeed, you may move forward. At first, the meaning of the message was unclear. The storm had already tested humanity's resilience, but now the challenge was different. It wasn't the forces of nature they had to fight, but the creatures that roamed Earth's wildest and most dangerous regions. Earth's ecosystems were home to creatures like no other in the galaxy. Beasts capable of tearing through metal, animals that thrived in environments hostile to most life forms. These were creatures honed by millions of years of evolution to survive in the harshest conditions imaginable. Humanity knew what it had to do. They had to face these beasts head-on, but this was not going to be a battle of weapons alone. This trial was about understanding, controlling, and surviving in the face of Earth's most dangerous predators. Dr. Samuel Rhodes, the scientist who had led much of Earth's preparations, knew the trials would be difficult. He had studied Earth's predators for years. Monsters like the giant, venomous serpents of the deep jungles, the massive beasts that roamed the tundras, and the predators that hunted in the most extreme climates. These creatures were not just challenges to survive. They were part of the planet's natural order, created by millions of years of evolution. Dr. Rhodes assembled a team of the world's top biologists, survival experts, and military strategists to formulate a plan. They studied the beasts, learning everything they could about their behaviors, their weaknesses, and their strengths. They knew that brute force alone would not be enough to overcome them. They needed to use the environment to their advantage, to outsmart the creatures, and to survive. The trial began when the aliens unleashed the first wave of predators. Giant, reptilian creatures that had been lying dormant in the deepest corners of Earth's most remote regions were now unleashed upon humanity. These creatures were as large as buildings, with scales tougher than steel and jaws that could crush stone. They roamed the Earth with no natural predators, and their presence alone sent ripples of fear across the planet. The first wave of attacks was devastating. Entire forests were leveled, and villages near the creatures' paths were destroyed. Yet despite the devastation, Earth's people did not retreat. They adapted. They learned. They began to set traps, to use the landscape to their advantage, and to work together in ways they never had before. In the jungles of South America, a group of military specialists worked with biologists to lure one of the creatures into a man-made canyon. They had studied its movements, its feeding patterns, and its weaknesses. With careful planning, they were able to trap the beast and render it unconscious long enough to transport it to a containment area. It was a dangerous gamble, but they succeeded. The first victory in the battle against Earth's deadliest creatures. Elsewhere in the vast deserts of Africa, another team was facing a different kind of predator. These were smaller, but much more intelligent. The creatures in this region had evolved to hunt in packs, and they were quick, cunning, and capable of taking down prey much larger than themselves. The team had to learn to use stealth, camouflage, and strategy to outsmart them. In the Arctic, another group of survivors faced a creature known for its strength and brutality, the ice bear. This predator was relentless and nearly unstoppable. It had evolved to survive in the harshest climates, and its thick fur and massive size made it a fearsome opponent. But the survivors used the frozen landscape to their advantage. They built traps beneath the ice and used the environment to drive the creature into these traps. They knew they had to be patient and precise. All around the world, humanity was adapting to the alien challenge. The creatures were difficult to defeat, but humans had learned to work together, to think creatively, and to use the environment to their advantage. In the face of danger, humanity was proving that it was capable of surviving Earth's deadliest creatures. As the trials continued, President Trask addressed the world once more. "We are not just surviving these trials," she said. "We are mastering them. The aliens believe they can test us with the forces of nature and the beasts of our world, but they are wrong. We will face each challenge, and we will prove to them that we are more than just survivors. We are Earth's defenders. We are humanity." The message was clear. Humanity had endured. The first wave of beasts had been overcome. The world had faced its fears and had not faltered. They had passed the test, and now they were ready for whatever came next. But the aliens had not finished with them yet. There were more trials ahead, and each would be more difficult than the last. The creatures that had been unleashed were only the beginning. The true challenge was yet to come. In the quiet moments between the trials, humanity knew they were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for something greater. They were fighting for their place in the universe. And with each victory, they grew stronger, more united, and more determined than ever before. The trials had escalated quickly, and humanity had proven itself resilient time and time again. But as Earth's people celebrated their victories over the beasts that roamed the planet, something far more ominous loomed on the horizon. The aliens had watched, observed, and analyzed humanity's every move. They had seen how Earth's survivors had adapted to each challenge, how they had used their environment and their ingenuity to overcome what seemed like impossible odds. And now, it was time for the final test. It wasn't just a test of Earth's strength or intelligence, it was a test of its very soul. The aliens had shown little mercy so far, but the final trial would push humanity to its limits. President Trask had no illusions about what this meant. The challenge was not just about fighting back or surviving anymore. It was about something deeper. It was about humanity's ability to endure, to make difficult choices, and to stay true to its values under pressure. The message came one morning, as the world was still recovering from the last wave of tests. The aliens had finally decided to reveal what their true trial would be. It was simple in its wording, but chilling in its implications. Now you must prove that your kind can govern yourselves. You will be tested on your ability to unite, to make decisions that will impact the survival of your entire planet. Your resources will be limited. Your survival will depend not on fighting, but on your ability to collaborate, share, and compromise. If you fail, you will be erased. For the first time, humanity was confronted with something beyond brute force. The aliens weren't asking them to fight monsters or weather storms anymore. They were asking Earth to prove that it could overcome its greatest weakness, division. The trials had united the world in a way that had never been seen before, but now they were being asked to maintain that unity in the face of impossible choices. As soon as the message was received, President Trask called for an emergency meeting of world leaders. It was not just the heads of government who were called together, but also philosophers, historians, ethicists, and social scientists. This was a test of human civilization, not just its survival. The future of the entire planet depended on the decisions they would make. In the meeting, tensions ran high. The world was still reeling from the loss and devastation of the trials. Cities had been destroyed, lives had been lost, and the scars of the past trials were still fresh. The idea that they would now have to work together to ensure their survival, without the comforting certainty of fighting or escaping, was deeply unsettling. "Do we give in to fear and mistrust?" one leader asked, his voice shaking. "The aliens want us to compromise. What if we make the wrong choice? What if they are leading us into a trap?" President Trask stood at the head of the table, her expression calm but resolute. "If we let fear control us now, we lose everything. These trials have tested our strength, our intelligence, and our ability to adapt. But the true test lies in how we act together. The aliens want to see if we are ready for the galaxy. But to do that, we have to prove that we can work as one." The world's leaders debated long into the night. The choices they faced were agonizing. They would have to decide how to allocate Earth's limited resources: food, water, medicine, and energy. They would have to decide who would get what, and how they would ensure that no part of the world was left to perish. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about fairness, justice, and compassion. In the end, the leaders reached an agreement. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't without its flaws, but it was a start. They decided to create a new global council, one that would represent all nations and ensure that resources were distributed equitably. Every country would have a say, and every person would have access to what they needed to survive. They would have to compromise, but they would not sacrifice their humanity in the process. The council was put into action quickly. Despite the challenges, the world began to adjust. Earth's people worked together, drawing on their shared experiences of survival. They learned to put aside old grudges, old rivalries, and instead focused on what was best for the planet as a whole. But the trial was not over. As the world began to adapt to this new way of living, the aliens introduced their next challenge. This time, it was not a test of Earth's strength or ability to cooperate. It was a test of its moral compass. The aliens wanted to see how Earth would respond when faced with difficult ethical decisions. The new test was sudden and unexpected. The aliens broadcasted a message to Earth, informing the world that they had isolated one part of the planet, an area rich in natural resources. However, the environment in this region had been devastated by the trials, and the only way to harvest the resources would be to use methods that would irreparably damage the planet. The aliens posed the question to Earth: would humanity sacrifice its long-term survival for short-term gain? Would it exploit the resources, knowing the consequences, or would it choose to live in harmony with the planet and find another way to survive? The choice was agonizing. On one hand, the resources were vital for humanity's future survival. But on the other hand, exploiting them would mean destroying the very environment that had allowed life to flourish on Earth in the first place. The debate raged for days. There were arguments over economics, politics, and ethics. Some believed that the aliens were testing their ability to make tough choices, while others saw it as a trap meant to expose humanity's greed and short-sightedness. President Trask, once again, was at the center of the decision-making process. She spent hours meeting with environmental scientists, economists, and moral philosophers. The weight of the decision was not lost on her. If Earth exploited the resources, it would gain the immediate advantage, but at the cost of the planet's long-term health. If Earth chose to preserve the environment, it would be a sacrifice, but one that would ensure humanity's survival for generations to come. Finally, after days of deliberation, the decision was made. Humanity would not exploit the resources. Instead, they would find a sustainable way to live, even if it meant sacrificing some immediate comforts. They would choose the long-term survival of the planet over short-term gain. It was a decision that would shape the future of Earth, and one that would echo across the galaxy as a statement of humanity's values. The aliens who had been watching from afar remained silent for a long time. And then, as the world waited for their judgment, the aliens sent a final message. You have passed the trial. Your decision is noted. You have proven that you can work together, that you can make the hard choices, and that you can survive as a unified species. You are ready. With that, the trial was over. The aliens had tested humanity's strength, its intelligence, its unity, and its morality. And Earth had passed, but the true victory was not in proving humanity's worth to the aliens, it was in proving it to themselves. As the dust settled, President Trask addressed the world once more. We have shown the universe what we are made of. We have faced unimaginable trials and emerged stronger, wiser, and more united. We are ready for the stars, but more importantly, we are ready for each other. The trials had ended, but Earth's journey was just beginning. The galaxy had been watching, and now it knew what humanity was capable of. The future of Earth was no longer uncertain. Humanity had proved that it could survive, adapt, and thrive. And as the stars beckoned, Earth stood ready to face whatever came next. The trials were over. Earth had been tested beyond anything anyone had imagined, and yet humanity stood strong. The challenges set by the aliens had pushed Earth to the brink of its limits, but each time, humans had proven that they were more than capable of overcoming the obstacles. From the devastating storms to the fierce beasts of the planet's wildest regions, humanity had adapted, learned, and emerged victorious. But the final trial had tested something deeper than survival, intelligence, or strength. It had tested humanity's values, its ability to unite, and its moral compass. And Earth had passed. President Helena Trask stood in the grand hall of the newly formed Global Council, looking out at the representatives from all over the world. The alien trials had been hard, but they had also forged a new sense of unity among Earth's people. Nations that had once been divided by conflict now worked together, not just for survival, but for the future. They had learned to share, to compromise, and most importantly, to trust one another. The scars of the past were still there, but they were healing, and the future looked brighter than it had in a long time. But despite the victory, there was still one question that lingered in the back of President Trask's mind. What now? The aliens had tested humanity, yes, but now that Earth had proven itself, what would the universe expect of them? What did it mean to join a galactic community that had watched their every move? In the days following the final trial, the world continued to recover. Earth's people celebrated their success, but there was an underlying tension. The aliens had acknowledged humanity's resilience, but what did that mean for Earth's future? Would humanity truly be welcomed into the stars, or would they remain a species marked by suspicion and fear? As President Trask sat in her office contemplating the road ahead, a message arrived. It was from the alien civilization that had tested them. The message was brief, but it carried immense weight. You have passed. You have earned your place, but this is only the beginning. The words echoed in Trask's mind. Earth had proven itself, but the journey was far from over. Humanity had earned the right to join the galactic community, but they were not yet ready for the challenges that awaited them. The trials had been about survival, unity, and morality. But now the real test would begin. Earth would have to navigate the complexities of intergalactic politics, cultures, and technologies. They would no longer be isolated, but would instead have to find their place among species far more advanced than themselves. As the message concluded, Trask's thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. She looked up to see a young aide standing in the doorway. "Madam President," the aide said, "there's something you should see. It's from the aliens. They've just sent another transmission." President Trask stood up and walked toward the screen. The message appeared before her, this time in a holographic form. It was not a written message, but a visual transmission. The alien representatives, those who had been observing Earth's trials from afar, were finally revealing themselves. Their appearance was unlike anything humans had imagined, tall, slender figures with glowing skin that seemed to shimmer with an ethereal light. Their eyes were vast and black, filled with intelligence and understanding that went beyond human comprehension. They were beings of unimaginable power, yet they seemed peaceful and curious. "We have watched you," the leader of the alien delegation spoke, their voice calm and melodic. "And we have learned much about your species. We have seen your strength, your ability to adapt, and your will to survive. But there is something else that has caught our attention, something that makes you different from any other species we have encountered. It is your spirit." The alien leader paused for a moment, as if gathering their thoughts. "You are unlike any civilization we have observed," they continued. "You are not just survivors, you are dreamers, creators, and builders. You have faced impossible odds, and yet you have not given up. You have fought not just for your survival, but for the survival of each other, and that is why you have earned your place in the stars." The words were met with silence in the room. The weight of the message settled on everyone present. The aliens were not just acknowledging Earth's resilience, they were recognizing the very essence of humanity itself. It was not Earth's physical strength or technological advancements that had won them the trial. It was the human spirit, the ability to endure hardship, to rise above failure, and to care for one another despite overwhelming challenges. "We have studied many worlds," the alien leader continued, "and we have learned that the greatest strength of a species lies not in its ability to conquer, but in its ability to unite, to adapt, and to learn. You, Earth, have proven that you are capable of all these things. And for that reason, we offer you our knowledge, our technology, and our guidance." The transmission ended, and the room fell into stunned silence. For a moment, no one spoke. The realization that humanity had not just survived the trials, but had earned the respect of a galactic civilization, was overwhelming. Earth was no longer just a death world. It was a planet with a future among the stars. As President Trask looked around at the faces of the world's leaders, she saw something that had not been there before: hope. Hope for a future where Earth was not just a small, isolated planet, but a thriving member of a vast and diverse galactic community. The road ahead would be difficult, and there were still many challenges to face. But humanity had proven that it was ready. They had faced their trials and had emerged stronger, and now they would take the next step. "Today," President Trask said, her voice filled with resolve, "we stand at the threshold of a new era. The universe has seen us and it has recognized our potential. We are not just survivors, we are creators, dreamers, and builders. We will go forward into the stars, not as a species afraid of the unknown, but as a species that is ready to explore, to learn, and to grow." The words echoed across the planet, and for the first time in centuries, humanity felt a deep sense of unity and purpose. The aliens had not just tested them, they had opened the door to a future that was brighter than anything Earth had ever known. Humanity was ready to join the galaxy, but more importantly, they were ready to take their place among the stars as equals. As Earth's people looked up at the night sky, they saw something that they had never truly seen before. It was not just the stars that glittered in the heavens, it was the future. And that future was wide open, filled with possibilities and potential. The trials had tested them, but they had proven that Earth was not just a death world. It was a world with life, with hope, and with a future. And in that moment, humanity understood the true meaning of their victory. It was not just about surviving, it was about thriving. And the universe, now watching them with new eyes, would never forget the spirit of Earth.